A very good morning to everyone. I am Kashish Singh, student of BA Honours Political Science 3rd year from Shamlal College Evening. And today I will be discussing with you the first subpart from Unit 1 of Text and Interpretation from the paper Classical Political Thought. In this part, we will get to know what are exactly classics, when does a text become classic, and finally, what are the methods to study these classics, in which we will be primarily dealing with two approaches, which is the textual and contextual approach. So let's just begin. Text and interpretation. सो जब भी हम कोई पॉलिटिकल थॉट पढ़ते हैं तो हमारा प्राइमरी एम ये होता है कि हमें उसका सही मीनिंग डिराइव करना होता है, ठीक है. वी हैव टू अटेन द करेक्ट इंटरप्रिटेशन ऑफ द टेक्स्ट एंड आइडियाज दैट द पॉलिटिकल थिंकर इज जनरली ट्राइंग टू पोर्ट्रे. एंड ये प्रोसेस और इम्पॉर्टेंट हो जाता है जब जो पॉलिटिकल थिंकर है ही इज़ नॉट विद अस इन द कंटेम्प्रेरी टाइम, बिकॉज ही इज़ समवन फ्रॉम द पास्ट हु इज़ whom वी कैन नॉट रीच नाउ. सो इसलिए जब भी आप प्लेटो की रिपब्लिक पढ़ेंगे या फिर मैकियावेली की प्रिंस पढ़ेंगे तो यू विल फाइंड कि दीज ऑल वर रिटन इन अ वेरी डिफरेंट कॉन्टेक्स्ट बोथ जियोग्राफिकली एज वेल एज हिस्टोरिकली. तो जब भी हम कोई पॉलिटिकल थॉट रीड करें वी शुड मेक श्योर दैट वी रीड इट विद अ करेक्ट अप्रोच. बट यहाँ पर जो क्वेश्चन आ जाता है दैट फ्रॉम वॉट परस्पेक्टिव शुड वी रीड दिस टेक्स्ट. शुड वी रीड इट फ्रॉम प्रेजेंट परस्पेक्टिव और शुड वी रीड इट फ्रॉम बाय सिचुएटिंग देम इन देयर ओन कॉन्टेक्स्ट. So if we read it from present perspective, for example if we read it, so it is more likely that our present day assumptions or our preferences or our biases are likely to influence that text. For example, if we criticize Plato or if we criticize Aristotle for any of the comment or any subject that they have written, it is more likely that maybe this subject or this comment was not that they have made was not as important as it is in today's time. So with this respect, the task of interpreting this text from our perspective in the present time becomes a difficult task. However, when we study these texts by situating them in their own text, in their own context or in their own time, it is quite feasible because these texts anyhow are the product of a particular geographical, intellectual and historical context. So if we interpret it with this respect by situating them in their own context, it is quite give us a good approach towards interpretation. And often this question is at the center of the methodological debate while studying the political thought and its interpretation. So in fact, since we as humans have our own assumptions, we have our own preferences, these often hamper our understanding of the political thought, and they do play a role in this. So even the author has a very little control over the meaning of the text that they have themselves written, because once these texts are published they have a life of their own, so they often outlive their author. And that is why these texts this is said that these texts acquire new lives in the light of new interpretation. That means every time they will be read by a new people, they will be interpreted in a new terms. For example, the text of Plato and Aristotle were found somewhere in third or 4th century, and then at that point of time it was translated by an Arab philosopher. But later, when it was discovered by modern state, they reread it. They read it and they reread it again and again. Then they themselves translated it, and further they translated and interpreted it to gather meaning that we now call as Republic of Plato and Politics of Aristotle. So these texts speak. We can say that these texts of the political thought speak differently to different audiences, and as they are read again and again, as they are reread, because of this only we see the evolution of a different kind of approach to study these texts, such as textual and contextual approach and many more approaches, because they are reread and reread and reinterpreted every time. So let's move to the next slide, which talks about what are classics and how to define classics. Before going directly to the classic, we should first know the whole idea of text. What is the idea of text? So, if we talk about the typology of text, basically there are two types of text. One is the text which you want to read with some interest and seriousness, and you try to complete this text as as the argument on the matter is unfolded in the text. So you just flip the pages, and once the text is completed, you finish reading it, you just put it aside. तो एक बार जब text खत्म हो गया पढ़ के आपने वो book पढ़ ली, so you will not touch it again. But there is another kind of text which you would like to read again and again and chew, then digest, and go back again and again read it. So you have kind of you want to read the text again and again with the same kind of zeal every time. So these kinds of text, the latter one which I have talked about, is falls into the category which is known as the classics. Okay, but there are certain criteria for a text to become classic, out of which the first one is the timelessness of this text. So timelessness of this text and the epistemic authority. By epistemic authority I mean that for example in our personal in our lives also we have many kinds of authorities in the state, and these authorities have certain kind of coercive powers, and we have to like abide by it. So in this context, in context of this, the text, they don't carry any weapon or any coercive power, or they demand any attention, but still they are referred by the people again and again. So in this sense they have certain authority, they have certain epistemic authority, which is quite different from the authority of a state we have talked. But still we will look back to these classics time and again and develop our own thinking. So irrespective of whether they have any authority or not, we will go back to them again and again for our reference, for horizoning our minds and our ideas. So that is why these classics are have a characteristics of timelessness and epistemic authority. Second is that these texts, in comparison to other, succeed in reaching out beyond the age. So they will not get bind to a particular age, that certain kind of age people will only read this classic. They have no foundation, and they kind of stimulate the minds of later generation, which makes them as classic. And they will also be termed as classic not because only some group of academicians have claimed that this is a classic. No, this is not the case. They will be termed as classic because generation after generation have found stimulating ideas within these classics. So many scholars have argued that classics are those representative texts which embodies the finest knowledge of their race. For example, if you want to understand the Greek political thought, you should refer to Plato and Aristotle because their texts have the finest knowledge of it. Similarly, if you want to have knowledge of 16th and 17th century England, then you have to read Hobbes' Leviathan. So every time you go back to classics, you come back with more knowledge, more better knowledge, not only of the text but also of the present. However, apart from this, there are some scholars, in contrast to the above one, who argue that a text becomes classics when it goes to understand the present and predict the future. For example, if you see Rousseau's work, so Rousseau's work is regarded as a text which kind of foresees the French Revolution even before it happened. Therefore, Rousseau's social contract is seen as a classic. So these are some of the characteristics which are given by some scholars, and which can decipher a text of being a classic or not a classic. Now moving on to the next slide, we will get to know what is the correct approach to understand or study these classics. Well, primarily speaking, there are two major approaches to understand any text, that is textual and contextual approach. So let's first understand the textual method. So in order to understand a text or its writer, first we need to understand what is said in the text, what the writer wants to say in that text. The study of text is the foremost thing to do, and this is called textual method. So what textual method does is it majorly focuses on the language of the text to get the real meaning, and also it uses the application of hermeneutics to the interpretation of text, as there is a belief that text of the classic contains reality. So in order to establish a degree of certainty in the light of available material, we use the text in classics to understand the past as well as the present. However, there is a degree of historicity which is involved in this. So This history is kind of a pretext, we can say, which is needed to understand the political thought in any problem. So we don't need to understand them as a historian, but yet they are relevant for our own ease and to develop our own thinking. That is why textual method has remained a very dominant study of political thought interpretation for a very long time. So in this, the focus is exclusively to the text and it's considered a sole authority. For example, we have to read Plato's Republic, then we have to read and reread it multiple times to evade off the confusion or the ambiguity that we are finding in it. And still, if the confusion or the ambiguity persists, then we can go and read the Republic in the light of other texts that were written by Plato, such as Georgia or Laws or Statements, to have a better understanding of this. Leo Strauss. Leo Strauss is considered as the chief exponent to this textual approach, because when he was giving his views on textual method, he emphasized on reading between the lines. And he said, what he said was that there are many meanings that the author wants to convey, and we cannot retrieve it just by reading the text, but by reading between the lines, because as it will disclose the because if we read between the lines, it will disclose certain meaningful silences, because sometimes what happens is that a writer don't want to say something openly. So these intentional ambiguities can be referred to as the historic forms of writing, where the author often deploys certain tactics, kind of a thing, to avoid the wrath or the punishment of the authorities, and and also he conveys his message through his text, and we can perceive this only if we read in between the lines. So if I give you an example, when you will read Plato in the further units, you will get to know that Socrates was forced to drink poison because the authority of that time found that his teachings or his ideas were posing a threat to their rule. So this is the case which is evident in 21st century as well, where we see that a similar kind of persecution against the writers, thinkers, journalism, and some books which are banned, which are thought to be dangerous to the present status quo. So reading in between the lines helps us to understand the hidden facts of the text, which will give us a more clear interpretation of the classics. But still, there is a problem with this textual approach. What the problem is that more often than not, textualists try to interpret the text of the political thinker by imposing certain sets of questions upon the ideas of the text, which is called as the fallacy of coherence. Thus, the statement of thinker are fitted into an already set framework, and if any contradictory statement is made by the author, they are overlooked. Fine. So this is one of the criticism of the textual method. Now let's move to the next slide, which is going to talk about the contextual method. So contextual method or the contextual approach is one which emphasizes on studying the classics by keeping in mind the surrounding condition and social and historical environment in which the text was written. So it is said to be it is said by many scholars that it is an extension of historical approach, that is why it is also known as historical method. And often the historians argue that they are the real custodian of this method, as they can directly through the methodology can get the correct meaning of the text or the political thinker. However, Quentin Skinner and J.G. Peacock who represent the Cambridge School, and this school kinds of extends the historical approach to study political thinker and political thought. So the defining feature of this school is the contextual approach, but they were talking about the contextual approach by linking it to the linguistic context. So Skinner is more kind of a conventional, so he, while speaking about linguistic context, also includes author's intention, while Peacock argues that linguistic context is sufficient to construct the meaning of the text or the political thought, but he argues that meaning available to the author depends on the ways of thinking, on the ways of writing, on the ways of speaking that exist in the community. So we don't have to pay separate attention to the linguistic context and the intention of the author. Also, Peacock says further that author's intention determines the or factors the text very minutely. It does not affect it very largely. Also, the Cambridge School of Contextual Approach rejected the myth of coherence. So, although the contextual method has become a dominant study in the classical thought, but still it has certain criticisms of its own. For example, some say that if we use context, and if the context is so important, then why should we study the text? We should study the context only. While some say that context may be necessary for the explanation of the text, but for understanding the context itself, it is not sufficient. Okay, so these are two of the criticism for the contextual method. So with that, it is all from this topic. It is all for this topic. With that, I would end my discussion, and I hope you enjoyed it.